Alright guys, NBA 2K16 just came out, literally, and I've played it for over 7 hours straight at this point. It's getting a little, it's a little crazy at my household because all it's been is just 2K16 lately. And I made a gigantic list of things that are more or less my first impressions of the game. And for those of you who are considering purchasing the game, I thought that this list might help for you guys to understand what the differences are. For you guys who haven't really gotten the game yet, this is what to expect. So first of all, I have to say that the game has a much bigger emphasis on simulation gameplay. There's an enormous new engine that's completely different from the previous game. 2K16 and 2K15 do not feel like the same game. A lot of the things are the same, and in fact they do look the same, but ultimately it's a very different game. The players are smaller in size. That's one noticeable visual difference I can tell, is that the players are much smaller in size. They've scaled the court to the player ratio much better, because previously if you were like 7'5" in 2K15, you legit looked like you were as tall as the rim, and that's not accurate. So I'm glad that they did that. One thing that I do notice is that the defense in 2K16 is considerably amped up. Players will shade and go over screens and go under screens appropriately based on the player. For instance, if you're Michael Carter-Williams and you're not necessarily the best shooter, players will go under screens as opposed to go over screens. But if you're Ray Allen, players will go over screens and they will shade you and they will double team you on the perimeter. And it's really, really amped up. The defense is considerably amped up, and not only that, the difficulty as a result is amped up. And one thing that I noticed that they did take away from is the crossovers. Yes, the crossovers are still there. They're still a lot like the 2K15 crossovers, but the major difference is that due to the defense, the amped up defense, the crossing over mechanic is stiffer. It's not as easy to cross people over as it previously was. If you check out my 2K15 gameplay, I'm crossing people over left and right with Kyle Lowry. I tried the same thing in 2K16 and it didn't work. It didn't work at all. And as a result, 2K16 takes away from the individual gameplay and brings more of a team mindset to the game. So in 2K16, in order to succeed, chances are you're going to have to employ plays, you're going to have to do picks, and you have to do post-up moves, and you have to learn your game very, very well. You have to know the game of basketball very well. As a former player myself, I know basketball pretty well, and it's helped me a lot, but ultimately you're going to have to learn the game, the actual game of basketball, in order to do well in this year's version. And I cannot tell you how happy I am because of that, because 2K until now has been a cheese fest, isolation, crossover, LeBron James invincible frame dunk, and it is no longer that. It is definitely no longer that. I feel like the new game engine has definitely given a new feel to the players. Faster players are indeed faster. They are significantly faster, in fact, than big men. And meanwhile, players like Anthony Davis, for instance, are very strong. Players like Dwight Howard are slower, but you can tell that when they're posting up, they bully people. And when they're being posted up, they don't move. And when they're blocking, they completely just dominate other people. And I am very, very happy about that. And as a result, there's a lot less invincibility frames, as I previously mentioned. There has been a gigantic upgrade. Excuse me. There has been a gigantic upgrade to the passing system. The passing feels a lot more fluid. Now the B button or the circle button is regulated to bounce passing, while the triangle or the Y button is regulated to lob passes over defenders. So previously the B button would be the screen button or the pick and roll button, and now it's just, they're both regulated to passing. And meanwhile, they've also taken the post-up move, which used to be Y, and they've changed it back to the L trigger. And I think this is good. I think this definitely helps with the fluidity of the post-up game. I think it allows you to make moves much quicker, driving to the lane or driving to the baseline. It makes it much quicker due to the L trigger being used. The game makes you employ different tactics. For instance, when it comes to pregame strategy, it's a very, very big deal nowadays, especially in online games. They give you 1 minute before you play an online game to strategize how you're going to play against your opponent, and then it goes from there. So I think that the emphasis on simulation, the emphasis on the actual game of professional basketball is fantastic. And the last thing that I can tell you is that the presentation in 2K16 is phenomenal. They brought Kenny Smith in to do an inside the NBA look. They literally have like mid-game interviews like they do in the actual NBA. So you'll be playing a game, for instance, of let's say the Pelicans versus the Lakers. This is my example because this is what I saw. I was playing as Kobe Bryant because I'm considering making a Lakers franchise right now. And while it was about like the second quarter, and once the second quarter started, there was legitimately an interview with a virtual Kobe Bryant, and the question was, how is he dealing with his age and injuries? And it's literally, the face scan is amazing, the lip syncing is like phenomenal, and I mean it's just beautiful. I've never ever seen anything like that in a video game before, and props to 2K because their presentation value this year has skyrocketed. Not only that, DJ Khaled, the soundtrack is the best soundtrack I've ever heard in a 2K game ever. Last year I thought it was not as good. I was not a fan of the soundtrack last year. This year there's over 50 tracks, and it's all good, from Drake to Gnarls Barkley to, I mean, it goes on and on. There's Jay-Z in it. There's a ton of DJ Khaled, obviously, but Wiz Khalifa, I mean, the soundtrack is stellar. So overall, this is based on the last 7 hours I've just been binging on 2K. I'm a huge 2K fanboy. I expect to make a lot of videos on this channel in the future, as I used to, but I have just been playing this game non-stop, and I gotta say, I am very, very pleased with how 2K16 has come out. It's a more difficult game. It's a game that's focused on simulation rather than isolation. But overall, I am very, very excited to keep playing it. I encourage you, if you're a fan of basketball, to pick up this game because it's fantastic. It's not perfect, but it is, in my opinion, better than last year's version.